as long as the population isn't, dropping dramatically in a particular market, there's always going to be demand. And as population is, increasing or even staying steady, I can go to pretty much any market and probably find a plot of ground where there's a demand for storage that is not being met, and there needs to be a development.
Hello, and thank you for joining us today on the Gentle Art of Crushing It show, where we focus on learning and sharing with our listeners all there is to know about how to create success in our lives. This show stands on the shoulders of giants. Our mission is to empower and inspire our listeners to create the life of their dreams whilst having a blast in the process. Let's celebrate life together. Welcome to the show.
Hey guys, I'm your host Sean Graham with the Gentle Art of Crushing It. And like all my podcasts, we focus on self-storage. So today I had the pleasure of interviewing Scott Meyers of selfstorageinvesting.com. Scott, he is one of the, I would like to say, OGs of self-storage. He's been in the game for a very long time. He started investing in 2005, and he has completed over 4 million square feet of self-storage transactions. He does a all expenses paid short-term mission trip to Mexico every year. They build 4 to 6 houses. He's just doing a lot of good things, and he's a wealth of information. And a lot of people that I've worked with have gone through Scott's education program as well. He's just really a wealth of knowledge and a master in the self-storage industry. So that being said, I really hope you enjoyed the podcast. I think there's a lot of good content in here. As always, hit the subscribe button and enjoy the show. Pleasure to have you here. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, Sean. Good to see you.
Yes, thank you for joining. So obviously you are one of the self-storage experts. You've been in the industry for a very long time, but for those who don't know you, can you just go ahead, give us your backstory and tell us a little bit about your journey?
Yeah, so I walked in a room the other day, Sean, and somebody said, "Hey, it's Scott Meyers, the OG of self-storage." And so I guess I've I've either arrived or I'm not so sure that I want to be there. But regardless, I'm embracing it and stepping into that. We've been investing in real estate for 30 years and in self-storage for 18. And self-storage basically found me. I didn't find self-storage. I was just kind of tired of the tenants, toilets, and trash and all that goes with it, and begin to look around the landscape and real estate and realize that, if I don't like tenants and toilets, it's parking lots or self-storage. And the more I dug into self-storage, I like the business model. It's a fairly simple, predictable business model. If people don't pay, you lock them out and you sell their stuff. I mean, what isn't there to like about rental real estate when you get paid and they can't destroy your property because it's a metal box on a concrete slab? And so back in 2005, we sold our apartments and our houses, and then my wife and I began investing in self-storage. And since then, we've grown to, we acquire existing facilities. That's been the model all along, still do that, and all value add, looking to, improve efficiencies of the operations, raise rates, run better, utilize technology, but then the component of development on top of that. So if there's another acre or two that we can expand, that is always part of the business model. But then we got into development from the ground up, buying pieces of dirt and putting self-storage on it, and then converting industrial buildings, warehouses, and other buildings into self-storage as well, which is probably our favorite and what we're, I would say, the best at. And then along the way, we created an education company. We realized when we got into the business back 18 years ago, there's a couple of books on it, but there wasn't, and you can go to the trade shows, but nobody's really teaching, A to Z, soup to nuts, how to find, evaluate, purchase, and manage self-storage facilities, and getting into the nuances of creative financing and the capital stack, and how to raise private equity, and deal structure, and how to plan for an exit strategy, and how do you scale and grow. And so we created an education company, and the pinnacle of that, we have coaching and mentoring and home study systems and seminars, 3-day workshops, really. And then the pinnacle of that is our mastermind, where the A players in the industry, and we get together once a quarter and we do business together, share best business practices, and are moving forward as a community that's investing together as well. So that's, I guess, the long and short of it. Got really good at private equity along the way. You can't grow to the place where we have with over 4 million square feet and 25,000 units nationwide now without being able to raise private equity. And so we do that, I would say, up there with the best of them. And so that's where I spend most of my time, is creating those relationships.
Hey guys, real quick, hope you're enjoying the show. This is Sean from Maven Equities, We raise capital for self-storage facilities, self-storage acquisition, self-storage developments. So that being said, if you are interested in investing in self-storage, go to my website, mavenequities.com. You can also check us out at mavenstorage.com if you are interested in possibly selling your self-storage facility, or maybe you're a landowner and you're interested in developing self-storage. Reach out to us and we would love to work with you, let you know what we think of your property or your self-storage facility, and see if it's possible to joint venture together, or maybe sell, or maybe work together in the future. Anyways, enjoy the show. I think the OG is an accurate term. You've been in the game for a lot longer than most people. Everybody, even myself included, I've been in the game for a few years now, but you've seen a lot, right? You said you got in 2005. So that's obviously prior to the big 2008 recession. It's prior to this recession, of course. But then also the market shifted a ton in terms of, hey, self-storage was kind of this almost like third tier asset class that no one really cared about, to it being one of the hottest asset classes there is now. So just kind of curious, for those people, like investors who are looking at self-storage now, or maybe it's operators who want to get into the game now, what do you think about this recession that we're going through compared to prior recessions, and how does this affect the industry? Because obviously interest rates are going up, it affects cap rates and everything, but where do you see things going?
So history tends to repeat itself, and we can point the path to profitability in each recession. And for those of us that have been around, this will be my third. You learn a few things. You have a different perspective, and you look a little further down the road because you know what to expect. And although every recession is different, and I won't pretend to know everything, because this will look different. And the first recession I went through in 99, 2000, that was the dot-com crash, and that was more of a Wall Street crash. And the last one was banking. It was real estate and then finance. This one, interest rates are essentially the same. When I went through in 2007-8, interest rates were at 8%. And so I think everybody's bellyaching. They got a little spoiled with, sub 4% interest rates. So, since 2009, we've seen this steady decline in interest rates. And we've all had this huge, not only sale, but then this huge wind in our back that has created a lot of money and success for folks. And so what that also does, success is a horrible educator. And so there's a number of folks in all forms of real estate, and quite honestly in business as well, that have had, this maybe 50% of the success has been as a result of a bull economy. Let's face it, and myself included. But so what we'll see, what I see in this recession compared to the last one, is many of the same things that we saw last time. And that is, there are some folks that got into self-storage or into different real estate investments, and they had this wind in their back, and they didn't really dig into and look at the four corners of the business, or maybe even treat it like a business. They treated it like a hobby, or, income producing real estate, does very well without as much heavy lifting as, say, other small businesses that are very, management intensive, labor intensive, and transaction intensive. And so I think maybe some folks were a little jaded, and they realized that, hey, I don't have to do much, and I can still make a whole lot of money. And so for us, the last time around, we saw those folks that didn't treat their facilities, their self-storage facilities, as a business, because it's real estate with a business on top of it. They didn't raise rates. They didn't, improve the net operating income, which is the value of their asset. They didn't reduce expenses. They over payrolled. They hired family members and paid them twice as much as what they're worth, but because they needed a job. And, they failed to appeal the property taxes or do all those things that you need to do that you should have a sense of urgency to do right away. And then when the recession hit, and remember when Lehman Brothers fell, we went off a cliff immediately. And interest rates went up, and it became very difficult for lenders to open up the pocketbooks again. And so those folks that were caught during that time frame in which they had to refinance, well, they got a 90% LTV loan when they bought it, when they bought the facility at 5% interest rate. They didn't build enough value into it, and now they're facing a reset of their interest rate, a refinance, because the term is due. Now interest rates are at 8.5, and the LTV is at 65% because the lenders are a little skittish because we're in the biggest recession that we've seen in our nation's history in terms of real estate. And so those folks that didn't create that value, Sean, they showed up to the closing table either with the keys to the facility because they had to give it back to the bank, or with a big old bunch of money, a bag of money to make up for the shortfall to be able to keep their property. And so I think we're going to see those same things again, and we are seeing some of those things again where folks are getting caught out. Either they bought a facility that was, it wasn't a huge value add, and so they couldn't push the value much. It just wasn't there, and now they're facing a refinance or a rate reset. Or the folks that just couldn't, or didn't do a good enough job of creating that value. And so, we'll see that happen again. I think Morgan Stanley just stated that roughly, of the $5 trillion in loans that were written in commercial real estate from 2020 up till today, about 2 trillion, so almost half of those are behind, and roughly 40%, the real estate, the underlying real estate is the valuation is 40% less than when the loan was written. So that's going to spell a lot of disaster for a lot of folks. And 450 billion is the most recent figure that I saw coming out to market that is in trouble this year alone. By the end of this year, that's going to be coming up, for sale, have to be reset, may go to foreclosure, but most likely negotiated in terms of a short sale or some type of the owner having to do something to be able to keep their real estate. So not painting a grim picture by any stretch. I mean, it's an opportunity for all of us on the acquisition side. That's what we've been preparing for since 2009 and 10. I saw a whole lot of folks, my peers, do a huge land grab because they had the cash, to participate, either assist, help, do joint ventures with these folks who are in trouble, or just buy the asset. And we recognized and realized pretty quickly that, we could have cleaned house if we'd had the cash. And so we've been preparing for this since then. And we've got private equity, more of it. We've got good lenders. And so, when those projects come to the market, and probably Q3 and 4, more of them, those troubled assets, we will be in a place, in a position to be able to help some of those folks along or be able to purchase those assets. So that's our master plan.
That's amazing. That's awesome. Well, I mean, it's awesome for you to be in that position. Obviously, for people who are in a bad position, it's not good, right? And it's time
Correct.
to kind of
Nobody likes to see
about
that.
it.
No.
We don't want to see anybody. Nobody likes to win based on somebody else's, loss where they're really going down.
Correct.
But at the same time, right, for those owners who have self-storage facilities, and maybe their note is coming due, maybe it's like the 5-year fixed interest rate is coming up, like here in 2023. What do you tell those people, right? Because, hey, I mean, you want to work with them, right? Like that's an opportunity maybe to JV together, or maybe it's just to sell outright. Like, what do you have any advice for those people?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I don't give advice, Sean. We're not a financial advisor. Only experience. We share experience, but we've got a lot of it. We've seen a lot. As you mentioned, we've been at this for a little while. And so we've gotten pretty good at, creative structures in a capital stack, and then also, digging into a troubled asset and how do we get ourselves out of this? What are the options? And so, as you can imagine, we've been at this for a little while, and, I write articles on self-storage for Forbes magazine, and I speak at the industry trade shows. And so there's a whole lot of folks when trouble begins to brew, by way of our podcast and otherwise, they find us and they come to our organization, and they're seeking help. And so, our staff and myself, we look at a lot of projects and we just provide options. And so many of those are, it's really just, dismantling it. Let's take a look at the underlying debt. Let's take a look at your valuation. What is a true valuation? How much cash do you have? How quickly can you create value? Does it make sense to sell now? What's your runway? What's the time frame? And unfortunately, Sean, it's, I think maybe sometimes pride and maybe, and I mean this in a polite way, ignorance. Ignorance of how much time they truly have left. People just don't maybe understand or realize that, you should have sounded the alarms, 3 months ago, and now, your options are limited because you're out of time. So, we look at the time that people have left, what kind of a runway they have in terms of their burn rate, their cash, and, how is their credit? What other assets do they have? And just, look at ways that we can structure and just provide options. And that's everything from you got time. You need to sell it now. Let's, based on our calculations and a cap rate on your NOI, looking back 12 months, here's where we think it would trade in the marketplace. Do you need a cash injection to, get over the hump, or to make it to stabilization, or to stave off, the bank resetting or calling a loan due? Well, what are those options? And, can we perhaps participate and provide some of those options? Is it just a restructuring of their debt altogether? Can they maybe do something, moving some cash around from some other assets? So anything from selling, joint ventures, bringing in other partners, restructuring the debt, putting new debt on it. Or just going back to the bank and having them assist or participate and really have them maybe stretch their LTVs in a refinance, or negotiate depending upon the lender. Sometimes they don't have they may not have a rigid box in which they have to operate from, and they have that flexibility. So there literally are 100 ways from Sunday, to use the cliche of restructuring a project that may be in trouble, and many times or sometimes there isn't any option. It's just, hey, you need to move quickly and you need to sell and lick your wounds and move on.
Yep, I can see all that happening, but I think it's good for folks to know that, hey, they don't have to always sell. They can go, like you said, they could partner with you, joint venture. You could bring a capital injection and really get through this time, or even having a good JV partner, right, can help you get better debt. The banks are looking at you. They see all of your experience. They see 4 million square feet of self-storage that you've done transactions on. So it's like, hey, this is, maybe we can give you better terms than if you were to go to the bank by yourself, right? And you're just a single person, single operator, and it's a local bank, and they're worried. That being said, like, you've done pretty much everything, right? From the syndication side, the capital raising side, the development, conversions, acquisitions. Can you talk a little bit about developments? Like, are you focused on developing now? Is that a big part of your company, or is it more like, hey, we're just getting ready to acquire because we see opportunity coming here in the next 2 quarters?
Yeah, interesting, Sean. In the last recession, heading into it, when the banks basically shut down, they weren't doing anything by way of development in terms of any development loans. Anything speculative was off the table, not even a discussion. And many of those banks are taking that posture right now that we're seeing. But it's interesting. We've had, again, every recession is a little bit different as we're heading into this one. We've had supply chain issues and delays from any side, all sides in a development project. Just spells over budget. It spells an increase in the development of a project, on top of the increase in raw materials, supplies. The steel prices have gone up, several 100% since before COVID, and then transportation costs, because the cost of transportation, it just is compounded, and so we're paying considerably more in terms of dollars per square foot to develop. However, the good news is, self-storage, as you mentioned, it used to be that, it was the ugly stepsister of commercial real estate until it became the Cinderella, and the belle of the ball, and the returns are strong. And that's because as we head into a recession, it is, we are needs-based and demand-based. And when there's trauma and transition in the economy, self-storage benefits. And so as a result of COVID in the past 2 years, our rental rate increases have gone up in step, with that increase in development prices. So we've stayed at, in pretty even keel in terms of, both going up and to the right, although we don't like, the cost of doing business going up, but rental rates have been strong. And so we do have lenders that have seen that and understand it. And, you talk with many investors out there like myself that have been at this business for a while, and they say, well, we can't really find any projects right now that pencil out. We can't find the value now. That is, kind of dried up. The low-hanging fruit is gone. And so we're not really in a position to be able to handle that right now. However, we've seen development costs that in terms of they've gone up a bit, but the yield in development is there, and so it has stayed just as strong. And so from that standpoint, investors are looking still at developing as a viable option as we head into the recession, until maybe the banks say no and they lower the LTVs down so much, or if prices increase again. So a long-winded answer to your question, and I don't want to answer everything with it depends, but that's the way we're approaching development right now.
Got it. Do you have any development projects underway currently?
We do. We've got one that is getting ready to open right now. We've got another one that is getting ready to break ground in Virginia, and we've got two others that we're looking at the moment. We got a conversion that's about halfway done, and we're getting ready to start another phase of it. So, and one more that's coming down the pipeline, and then another part of the world that we're looking at doing some development in, as well as the middle class continues to emerge in other parts of the world.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's good. Now, you typically do Class A facilities, right? We're talking like indoor climate controlled facilities. Do you ever dip your toe into the Class B or Class C facilities, where it's more drive up self storage, or is it just that's not where your company is best putting their resources into?
Yes, to all the above. The business started with Class C facilities, taking them of Class C, a mom and pop operation in a secondary, tertiary market, and taking it to a solid B plus. It's never going to be an A, but we can take that and create value in it. Drive the NOI by increasing rates, running it better, utilizing technology, and improving the curb appeal and security, and all those other ancillary income streams, and running it and treating it like a business. That's been our bread and butter model, and we do that very, very well, and continue to do that to this day. We have a $25 million fund that we just filled up, and we've got our last three assets, which are all that. They're Class C facilities going into it, but we know we're going to have a 2x, almost 3x return once we stabilize those properties and do what we do in creating value. The development side is nothing but Class A. So, those are almost exclusively, 2 and 3 story, 100% temperature controlled facilities, positioned in markets and at a site and a location that a REIT would want to buy it. And that is by design. That would be the exit, is to roll up our portfolio and then sell it off to a larger player, whether it be a national fund or a REIT. We're also developing Class A single story drive up climate control, which is what we've seen our consumer wants. They want the flexibility of being able to drive up to their units rather than going in with a cart and narrow halls and an elevator and making multiple trips. But they also want climate control. They want temperature control to store their goods in. And so, if it makes sense, and we have, a larger parcel, a 4 or 5 acre parcel, then we'll develop single story, all climate controlled. Again, just depending upon the climate and cost of concrete, and again, all things being equal. So we are doing all of the above, Class A, B, and C. If we can create value in it and with it, then we'll do it.
Got it. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, people are willing to pay more if they can drive up to the facility and drop their stuff right off. Yeah, and so once you start getting 3 stories up and you have to get in the elevator and stuff, you're just not going to maximize your rental rate per square foot. So, but at the same time, it's not always easy to build 100,000 or 75,000 square feet all first level. Yeah.
No, it's not. Development of any sort is not for the faint of heart, period.
I think a lot of self-storage facility owners right now are seeing a decrease in rental rates, a decrease in occupancy overall. And I think that's due to interest rates, right? The housing market has just slowed down, or almost stopped, right? Where people aren't moving. It's just not the same demand as it was during like COVID, when there's a lot of money out there, and self-storage is kind of it's an extra thing and an extra cost. And so, I guess, what are you doing at your facilities to kind of counteract that, right? Counteract the decrease in occupancy and try to balance that out.
That's interesting. Again, as we look to the past and the last recession, again, we're demand based. We are needs based. We don't send out necessarily. Some owners, operators will, but we don't send out coupons in a Valpak, like people do for dry cleaning and a haircut. Most people are going to need their clothes dry cleaned and a haircut eventually, and they'll use that coupon. Storage is demand-based, it's need-based. And as you mentioned, it's, many times when there's a lot of activity in the marketplace on the single family side, when people are buying houses and moving and they're trading in, trading up, they're going to stage their house first because the agent told them to get all the kids' plastic stuff out and make it look like there's more room. And then they'll put their stuff in storage when they're getting ready to move, and they may keep it there for a fair amount of time. Or if they're going to remodel in their new home as well, they'll put all their stuff in there, or what was going to go in the basement of their old house is going to go in the basement of the new, and they have to remodel, and so they'll put that in storage. We've seen, some of that has slowed, and that has caused a leveling off of rates. We've seen, not as much of an uptake and leveling off of rates, but we haven't seen much of a downturn. So when we get into, as you mentioned, when people don't have as much disposable income and that storage is a luxury, yeah, in some instances, but primarily the demand is still needs based. And so as we head into a recession, like we saw even with the pandemic mimicked, a recession. And immediately when there was a lockdown, there's a lot of businesses that shut down, and they put their excess inventory into storage because they lost their building, or they gave up their lease, or they were subleasing now a certain amount of space because their business had declined, and they put their extra inventory, or they put their extra office equipment and or other manufacturing equipment into storage. When folks either lost their jobs or they were sent home, many times they had to create a work environment at home for 1 or 2 wage earners, and then schools were shut down and the kids came home, so now they had to create a classroom in the home. And so the dining room furniture, the formal dining room furniture, a lot of the stuff in the spare bedroom and elsewhere in the house went into storage. And so we saw a huge surge in demand for self-storage, and rate increases year over year of double digits, in some cases month over month double digits. And so, again, that mimics a recession. We're going to see, as we're seeing right now, businesses slowing down. There will be businesses as we head deeper into the recession that will go under. They will put excess inventory or goods into storage. People may lose jobs and they may need to downsize, like we saw back in 2008, move back home, move in with each other. There's stuff they're not going to get rid of, and they'll put that in storage. And we still have the demand of the baby boomers that are retiring. They're downsizing their homes, putting it in storage, going to assisted living, downsizing again. And then when they pass on, the kids get their stuff and they put it in storage because it doesn't all fit in their house, but they're not going to get rid of it. So the demand for storage still remains very steady and very strong. It's just that those demands that the market is driving shift as we head into a recession, if that makes sense.
Right. No, that makes complete sense. You're a Midwest guy, right? You're from Indiana. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Yep. So I'm in Michigan, and both Midwest people here. And I love the Midwest, and I love the Midwest market. And really, I would like to focus on developing here. But everybody seems to be moving south, right? It's like the developments are all going on in Texas or in Florida. Now, I know you mentioned Virginia. I don't know what other states you're in, but are your development projects, I guess, are you focused more on the South? And I don't know why, what it is, but here, right, you could have a market and it's maybe you're getting $1.50 a month in rent for a climate controlled unit, right, on average. But in Florida, right, you're getting $2.50. And so, you start putting that on a cap rate and you start looking at evaluation. It's why even waste your time up here when there's that? But also there's the competition. So just curious in terms of markets where you want to be at, or if you're if you're still looking in the Midwest too at developments.
Well, grass is always greener, right? And it'll continue to always be greener for the investor that is searching for, the self-storage Oz, where all, streets are made of gold and rental rates are $3 a foot and they can buy, land for, $10 an acre. That is one of the benefits of the Midwest is that our cost per acre for land to develop is less expensive than some of the more desirable plots in, say, Florida or in Texas, essentially. I think much of the money and much of the development is in the Sun Belt states because there's a lot of activity, people moving there, and you just have a massive population. Again, we have this is not an easy business because no business is easy, but it's a fairly simple and predictable business model. And you can drop me into any market and even a sub-market, and a market for a self-storage facility is really less than, but a 5-mile radius. If I found a plot of ground for sale I draw a ring around it, or, depending upon the natural barriers with highways and rivers, what's the drive time? I can understand that if there's, more than 7, 8 square foot of self-storage per person, it might start to get a little bit oversupplied. But if it's less than 6 or 5, most likely going to be undersupplied, greater demand, and higher rental rates. So all things being equal. So I think the drive and the push to Florida and Texas has been a result of COVID. There's been a movement from the more difficult states to do business in or live in, quite honestly, from, the blue states to the red states. That's where you see the migration. And it's nicer climate, and people don't have to, as businesses recognize that people can be productive working from home, we don't have to bring them back in the office. And I can say this, Sean, I know you're a Michigan guy, and I grew up there. If your business is located in Flint, Michigan, well, you don't have to live there. Now you can move to Florida, and if your company allows it, you can do work from home. And so, no offense to anybody in Flint, Michigan, that's my hometown, but it's difficult to get those rental rates, in a market that is still declining in certain, cities and markets throughout the country. So, again, and I want to be the optimist, but also a realist at the same time, and that land is less expensive in the Midwest. Demand is still there, and if the numbers pencil out, what may appear to be grand slam home runs just by moving and going to another state, all things being equal, it may be more expensive for the land and everything else, and so your yield is roughly the same. So, as long as the population isn't, dropping dramatically in a particular market, there's always going to be demand. And as population is, increasing or even staying steady, I can go to pretty much any market in Michigan, Sean, and probably find within a 5-mile radius, a plot of ground where there's a demand for storage that is not being met. And there needs to be a development.
Yep, I agree with you. Yeah, I should have noted. I see the winged helmet in the background. So I see that the Michigan
Yep.
helmet. I didn't realize you were from Flint. That's interesting.
Yep.
Yeah.
Everybody has to be from somewhere.
Right. Yep. So you mentioned earlier that you have a fund, right? And so in the beginning, I'm guessing you were doing individual syndications
Yes.
on every deal you did, like 506C syndications, raising the capital on a deal by deal basis. How long have you moved over to doing the fund model, and how has that shown success for you versus like raising capital on a deal by deal basis?
Yeah, good question. There's pros and cons to both. I kind of went kicking and screaming into the fund, only because I'm a risk taker when it's my own money and my own butt on the line, and I do have a lot of confidence in myself and in my experience. But I never want to go into a deal with somebody else's money and being, a little too overconfident. And when you raise capital in a fund, in a blind pool, you're pulling their money in, and then you need to be confident enough that you're going to go find a project in a very short time frame that is going to match the returns that you have projected and offered to your investors. And so I've heard of some folks that have just regretted it and have not had success, and they didn't meet their projections, and some that had a worse experience with their, for their investors, if you will. And I never want to put myself, Sean, in a position where I took investors' capital and I had to deploy it, and I didn't have the means to do so, identified right away. And so that forces you, I think, to make bad decisions as an investor, because now you're going to buy something. It may not meet your buy box and your acquisition criteria or development criteria, but you're going to do it because you got a distribution coming up to your investors, and they want to see something, and you're maybe tapped out, and you don't want to provide those returns and those distributions from cash or somewhere else. So it could be a slippery slope, and I never want to put myself in that position. So the model of syndication, however, you get the deal and then you run like mad, right? You get under contract and you scramble and you go out to your private equity list, you do your due diligence, you hold a webinar and you bang the phones and you put the offering memorandums out in front of folks. And if they've got a good relationship with you, they know, like, and trust you, and you've made money for them before, you're making money for them now, you raise the money, $50,000, $100,000 at a time, and you're able to fill up that, do that deal, for $10 million by raising $2.5 to $3 million. Challenges, you got to do that, get people to move their money around, get it all in before you're at the end of your due diligence, and you may fall out of contract. There's a seller who doesn't want to wait around for you to do what you need to do because they got a cash offer waiting in the wings. And so, those are the pros and cons of both. The blind pool is great. when you have a healthy pipeline, and we had a healthy pipeline, and we were getting ready to lose out on some projects. And so when you're ready to lose out on projects because you don't have the capital and your pipeline is robust, that's the time to step into a fund. That gives you the confidence to know that you're going to be able to find the project. Your marketing is hitting on all cylinders. What you're seeing in the markets you're operating in gives you enough confidence that you're going to be able to find, or that the deal flow is coming to you. That's when you do a fund. When things slow down a little bit, I'd rather go back to a more safe model where I find the deal first that's going to produce the returns, and then I put the private equity into it. So we're getting ready to start another fund. It was going to be $50 million. We're going to back that down to $25 million, and that's going to be more of an opportunistic fund, which allows us to do a few different things rather than just value add facilities. So again, keeping it conservative in terms of our returns and our ability to fill not only the fund, but then also to fill it with the properties that are going to source the returns for our investors. So again, long-winded answer to your question, but we approach it both ways, and there's pros and cons to both ways.
Yeah, that's very cool. I mean, 20 million, that's a big fund, but that just shows, with your track record, and people still want to invest. There's still capital out there, and people are looking for good deals. And self-storage is still like a very proven asset class, and it's done very, very well overall, compared to, most other like real estate asset classes, and of course the stock market. You mentioned before the call that you do, and I've heard this before, but you do mission trips to Mexico with your company every year, and I've seen pictures of those. Those look really cool. Can you tell us a little bit about that? And also, you said your company, you give back, and so I didn't know. I guess some of your funds or some of your profits go into building homes in Mexico? Just tell us a little bit about that part of your business.
Well, yeah, and we could talk for another hour on that. That's our passion, is our mission and our work in the mission field. And from the beginning, my wife and I, the giving was always a part of this of our business, and the flexibility and the freedom that self-storage has brought for ourselves and our family has just been incredible. These things cash flow like crazy, and we don't have the tenants and the toilets and the trash like we had with our apartments. So we could go on a cruise, and if our cell phone doesn't work, guess what? There's no sense of urgency. There's no pipes and no people living in our storage units. So, it gave us the freedom to be able to go out and do what we wanted to do. And that meant also in the beginning is that we give 10% of our profits back to the mission field. And we landed on building houses in Mexico. And so, we take our family, our friends, coworkers, neighbors, vendors, partners, anybody who really wants to go on a mission trip with us. We pay for the whole trip. We pay for the houses. We pay for the trip, except for everybody's airfare to San Diego. And we go on these 4-day family-friendly mission trips. We partner with YWAM, Youth with a Mission. It's a global organization, mission organization, and their division called Homes of Hope is in charge of building the houses. And so we partner with them, and what I mean by partner is they provide the slab, the concrete slab when we show up. They have a base that is absolutely beautiful in Ensenada, Mexico, which is a cruise ship, a port, and a very safe environment. And in 4 days, 2 days of travel on the front and the back end, and 2 days to build, we bring families down with kids as young as 6 years old and up. And they see what it's like to be able to build a house, work alongside of some folks, and understand how 90+% of the rest of the world operates. And at the end of 2 days, we're able to hand the keys over to a deserving family and generational poverty, one family at a time. And we're doing 2 of these trips a year now, building 3 to 4 houses each and every time. We've got in June, we're heading down again, and we're taking a group of 80 people to go down and build 3 houses with us, and attracting some other financial partners along with that. If we open it up and we make it free for people to come, that is part of our mission field, for them to have the experience that they will have, or what God has in mind for them when they get there. But many of our folks have had an incredible experience, and then they've modeled what we're doing, and they've taken that back to their organizations, and they're giving back by building more houses, and they're doing it along with us as well. And so the ripple effect, we didn't have any idea what the ripple effect would be when we started, Sean, but it's been pretty awesome to see over the years, the cool things that folks that have gone on these trips with us that they're doing, and not just building houses, but other mission work and charity work that, as a result of going on this trip, their heart was changed, their mind was changed, and they got changed somehow. when they were there, and now doing some great things in the world and giving back. And we've realized that if you have an open hand, money's always going to flow through it. It'll go out and it'll come back in. And so that's just been part of our DNA from the beginning. And pretty soon my wife and I will be, I'd say within the next 10 years, we're going to flip the script and we'll spend 80% of our time on our mission efforts and raising more funds and awareness to do that, and 20% of our time in the business just to keep it moving and hiring good lieutenants to make sure that that happens so we can do what we have a passion to do.
That's fantastic. I think there's a lot to be said for just getting your hands on just wood and building materials and actually doing it. Like, we all sit behind our computers and behind our desks pretty much all day long, even as self-storage owners and operators, right? Like, we're not there at the facilities like cleaning up, but we have teams and people who do that. So to actually get out and physically work, I think that's fantastic, and it's I imagine it's very satisfying.
And sore back and your smashed thumb and your blisters never felt so good at the end of 2 days.
Right. So in a couple days, you're building an entire house, is what you're saying.
We're building an entire house in 2 days. Yeah.
That's incredible. And then the company that you were, or the nonprofit that you partner with, they are choosing like families in some way.
Correct.
To
they do all the legwork, and as you can imagine, they have a whole lot of folks that apply, and they go through a very rigorous vetting and screening process. I mean, it's sad at the end of the day that not everybody qualifies or is able to get a home. But the good news is that the people that are truly in the most need and deserving because of a hardship, that they are the ones that are they're getting the houses, and the incredible life change and family change that what we see in that family, and then that we also receive as a result of helping and coming alongside of them is, I am longing for the day when we do and are spending 80% of our time making a bigger difference in the world rather than doing what we're doing in self-storage. But that's the avenue. That's the
awesome
facet, and that's the vehicle that makes it happen.
That's awesome. Are you going to, you said you go to San Diego, and then are you driving down there? Does everybody drive from San Diego across the border?
We take charter buses, and we supply those, and luxury coaches, and we go across the border. We go across as a group, and it's very quick and painless. And it's an hour and a half drive down Highway 1, which, if you close your eyes, it's the same as California, which, beauty knows no bounds. And we drive down alongside the ocean and the cliffs, and then we land there at the ocean city of Ensenada, Mexico, which is just a beautiful town, and just fantastic folks, and just a great venue and setting for us to be able to do our work.
Well, Scott, I just have a couple more questions for you. One is, do you have any like tech recommendations? I always like to ask people that tech recommendations or book recommendations. And then of course, how do people get in touch with you? If they want to get involved just on the self-storage side, or they want to get involved in the mission trips, just learn more about, your company, where do they go?
Sure. So book recommendations, there's a handful that are still on my desk at all times that I refer to and go back to over and over again. And we have a new somebody coming in at the C-suite level into our organization, and they're learning about traction. So if you haven't read the book Traction, and the entrepreneur operating system, that is one of our handbooks around here, and we operate under that and utilize those tools and have implemented it very well. So I'd point people to that. If you run a small business, at the end of the day, there's multiple systems and ways of being able to do it. We've just found that Traction is the one that has allowed us to gain the most traction. In terms of on the tech side, I would say in that same vein, Keith Cunningham, How to Build a Wildly Successful Business, another good book. But within that, he stresses dashboards. And then in business, it's much like sports or anything else. If you don't know what the dashboard is, or how to read, the scoreboard, and you don't know how to read it and understand how to score and who wins, then you really don't have a business, and you're not going to make it very long. And so, getting a good set of books, it starts with books, and whether you're using QuickBooks or not, and having somebody who can then provide the reports, but then putting it into a dashboard, and so that what levers to pull to make an effect or a change in your organization, and also know when to put those alarms in place that this is a threshold that is unacceptable, and those alarms go off and everybody jumps in. Again, if you don't don't know the plays, if you don't know how to read the scoreboard, you're really flying blind. And if you're successful in business, it has been luck, and it may catch up to you. So I would say, on the tech side, getting a good, strong financial dashboard. Fathom HQ is one of those out there. That's a good model. There's a number of them to be able, to look at, and they're bolt-ons, and there's a AI an API link, from QuickBooks, and multiple ways of getting data in there. But I think you need to have a dashboard to understand, what's going on with your business. If you're running low, if you're ready to overheat, or if you're running low on gas, those are things that you need to know in your business.
I just wanted to touch on that. Is that similar to like the EOS scorecards, like you mentioned, traction, entrepreneurial operating
I would
system?
say so. The EOS scorecard is very rudimentary. It could be in Excel. We put ours in Smartsheet, and that just measures and tracks our KPIs. But essentially, I'm looking at, call it a macro level or a really granular level, in terms of, calculating your burn rate, your cash flow and your burn rate. What is the effectiveness of your employee? How much revenue is every employee generating in your business? And so, having access to that type of data to be able to make those decisions. When do you hire somebody, and is somebody producing enough, and is another headcount, is that actually going to produce more income, or is it truly just an expense right now that offloads some of the work so that the other people can be successful, and how much more successful? How does that weigh out? What is the return on that additional headcount and that additional salary? And if you're scaling fast, again, those are some of the decisions that if you don't have a good dashboard to understand what that looks like, you may be lucky, or you may find yourself unlucky if you haven't done it correctly.
Yeah, that's very good to know. I mean, I'm very curious about that. I'm going to look into it after we're done with this podcast. I was also curious. You said the EOS model. You typically have like a visionary and an integrator. Are you in both roles right now? Do you consider yourself like the visionary and the integrator? Like, how do you look at that, or do you have those really separated out?
Yeah, no, there is no separation. I'm if we want to talk about predictive index and enneagrams and all that, I'm an Enneagram 9, and so I'm the peacemaker, but I also have control issues, and so I'm still integrating even though I'm the visionary. So I am the visionary, and that is my role. In terms of the integrator, what I'm doing in terms of execution. Yes, I'm involved in meetings, and I'm involved in key meetings and interviews with folks, and I'm also in charge of growing the brand, and that's mostly from a private equity standpoint, but also from a posturing standpoint for our brand and our business, and just going out and seeking different and bigger opportunities in terms of joint ventures and advancing the brand. On the day-to-day execution, however, the raising of capital from syndications to growing the retail side and kind of overseeing the marketing to that, or the messaging, is somewhat of a visionary role. But also ultimately, I do, Sean, I don't demand perfection, but I expect excellence in my organization. And so when information goes out, content goes out, I don't look at it all. I mean, my folks are really good. I've got really good lieutenants underneath, but some of those critical pieces, I need just to make sure, I step in every once in a while to make sure that what's going out is my voice. If you're raising capital, or if you're growing a brand and people want to do business with you, if they're doing business with somebody in your organization, or they see a content piece that goes out, an article, a blog post, or anything else, and it's not your voice, people see through that. And, if they're going to know, like, and trust and work with us, especially if they're going to use their hard-earned dollars to invest with us in the private equity side of the business, then we need to be succinct, and we need to make sure that the messaging is correct, and that there is no question that we are the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow, and everything that we do is pointing towards one thing, and is profitability for our business and profitability for our investors that come alongside of us.
That's fantastic. Well, Scott, thanks for being on. What's the best way for people to reach out to you or to get involved?
Yeah, selfstorageinvesting.com is the mothership, and we do have tabs that go over to our other sites for our mastermind, as well as how to invest passively with us in our passive investments and in our fund. But to learn about the business, to learn about us, and a lot of free tools and free resources and white papers, selfstorageinvesting.com is the place to start. It's where everything happens. Okay. Link to our podcast, as well as to be able to listen to those as well, as you mentioned, Sean. So that's the place to start. And of course, I'm out there on all the socials as well. You just type in Scott Meyers Self Storage, and last count, there's about 40,000 impressions all over the place. So I'm not hard to find.
And your podcast too, right? Your podcast, you put out your great content
And
every
a
week.
podcast, yeah, the Self-Storage Podcast. Yeah, yep. That is a labor of love, and it is that has changed a lot of lives as well. And I love to do it, having conversations, and like the one you and I are having, Sean, just talk about the business and advance people and answer the questions. Is just love talking about it. Everybody at home is tired of me talking about self-storage, so it's great to get on a podcast and talk with other folks about it. That's my outlet.
I know. My wife doesn't want to hear any more about it. Yep, I hear you. Okay, well, Scott, it's been great having you on. I really appreciate you taking the time and getting on here and just talking about it. Sounds like you're doing great things, and the mission trip stuff is just very cool.
My pleasure, Sean. Great to connect again.
All right, thanks. We'll talk later.
Take care.
Bye. Hey guys, hope you enjoyed the show. As always, hit the subscribe button down below. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. It's all under the Gentle Art of Crushing It. I will continue to host, approximately once a month or so, and my focus is always self-storage. Hit the subscribe, and thanks for listening.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Another episode of The Gentle Art of Crushing It. It was an amazing episode. We know we sure learned a lot, and we hope you did as well. We want to take a second and thank you so much for viewing or listening to this episode. And please just know that we only ask for one favor, and that is to make this life magnificent. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.